Evan's ungentlemanly thoughts were interrupted when he could not help but notice that a man in a dark blue suit appeared to have taken an overpriced amount of interest in him. Chapter 25. A darker shade of hopelessness. Looking around, Evan could see no sign of Fate, and then thought that perhaps the conversation with Woody had made him so late that Fate had given up on the idea and gone to bed. At first he walked past Fate, not recognising him, sitting at the bar. He was wearing a new outfit, and with his blonde hair slicked back, it appeared a lot darker. "Evan," Fate called out, "I've got you half a lager. I hope that's okay." Evan then realised that he had just walked past his companion. He turned around to see Fate sitting on a bar stool. It came as no surprise that he only had a glass of orange juice. Evan commented on how unusual Fate's new top was, another fancy piece of attire. Although the top appeared to be dark blue, it was in fact sky blue. The garment's colour was an illusion created by the effect which its pattern had upon it. Hundreds of horizontal dark blue dashes, gathered closely together, covered the background, deceiving the eye into an erroneous perception of its colour. "Is it made from the same material as your other one?" "It is my other one, though it has been laundered." Now, Evan had to admit to himself that he had been impressed with the exceptional laundry service. What with the clean footwear and the new lace, but no amount of cleaning was going to wash out and exchange the colour of Fate's top, even in personificaria. Fate had obviously misunderstood his question, so Evan posed it again. Fate turned the bottom of his garment up to reveal its reverse side, all coppery brown and rustic red. Evan smiled and shook his head a little. He sat down on a bar stool next to Fate, and then taking hold of his beer glass, he toasted Fate's generosity with the word, "Cheers." "Cheers," returned Fate. Evan apologised for being late. "Sorry I've been so long. I've been talking to the boy. We had a bit of a fallout." "Oh, really? What brought that on?" "It was my fault," confessed Evan, feeling embarrassed and unkind. "I accused him of stealing your penknife." To Evan's surprise, Fate did not respond verbally. He simply raised an eyebrow instead. "What?" inquired Evan. Fate remained silent, and again raised an eyebrow. "What?" pursued Evan. "It worked then." "What worked? What are you talking about?" "Why do you think I gave him the knife when you were not there?" Evan looked away to hide the annoyance that was rising within him at the fact that Fate had deliberately caused him and the boy to all but fall out with one another. "It needed doing. You needed to have the talk. Think about it. One of us had to tell Woody what he will become if no one changes their behaviour patterns." Fate gave Evan a moment to think about it and then asked, "Would you have preferred if I'd have told him?" "No, but it just seemed callous. Couldn't I have told him without the accusation?" "You would never have gotten around to it, and it would never have been the right time. You could have told him in the field when we set off, encouraged him to come on the journey, as it were. Or in the field on the road to nowhere, after you told him you love him. You would never have known how to phrase it. Sometimes, Evan, a good argument is more effective than a poor discussion. Answer me this. How do you feel about each other now?" It was Evan's turn to smile, as he realised how clever Fate was at manipulating young Evan the boy and Evan the man. "Closer now than we were before the argument." Evan smiled. "He's promised to keep me safe." "I rest my case." Not for the first time was Evan impressed by Fate's ability to influence situations and emotions. He was about to take a drink of the beer when a thought occurred to him. How did you know that I would find the penknife? I knew you would have the boys' clothes laundered along with your own, and I knew you wouldn't put them in the hatch without this. He pulled a single white sock from inside his garment, jiggled it at Evan, and then placed it in one of the many pockets which his trousers possessed. Once again, Evan felt an admiration for the workings of Fate's mind, and thought that being impressed by Fate was becoming a habit. Evan lifted his glass to take another drink of his beer, but his arm seized midway between the bar and his mouth. He lowered his glass. The lady whom had made him postpone his mouthful of beer was heading his way. Yes, it's true. She's coming over here, he told himself. Then he thought it might be a good idea to stop gawping. Adopting his coolest posture and sporting his most unassuming attitude, he moistened his lips in preparation to speak to the woman who was walking towards him. The woman was almost level with him now, so he cast his eyes elsewhere in an attempt to portray that he was indeed as cool as he believed he looked. The woman spoke. Hello, you. Oh, yes, Evan said to himself excitedly, but before he had a chance to return a reply to the lady with the long shapely legs, Fate returned the greeting that the woman had just delivered to him. Evan was crushed. He turned away to hide the disappointment which his vanity was responsible for, and under his breath he muttered some self-chastising comment. The woman then kissed Fate on the side of his face, while Evan was looking down at the floor where his ego was now residing. Nice dress, said Fate, as though he'd never seen it before. Just some old rag I threw on, she teased, trying to pretend it was some off-the-peg number and fooling no one. It was made of two halves, with each piece negatively mirroring the other. The left-hand side of the dress was white, with an arrangement of red hearts scattered upon it, whilst the right-hand side was red and was covered with white hearts. To break up the pattern of hearts, the dress was peppered with an endless number of red dots and white dots, respectively. The dots were the same size as those to be found on the cream high-heeled shoes that the woman was wearing. Would you like a drink? Fate offered the lady. A dry white wine would be most agreeable, said the woman in a soft whisper that Evan could barely hear. Evan was straining to listen to the conversation over the noise of the other customers and the soft manner in which the woman spoke. When are you going to introduce her to me so I can learn whatever lesson it is that she is obviously here to teach me? He silently pleaded with Fate, who carried on talking, apparently unaware of Evan's wishes. Where is she? Asked Fate. She's still getting ready, of course. I wasn't sure you'd get back in time to make preparations for the hunt, my love, but I hoped you would. We cannot make any tonight, but there is no way that we would miss out on the hunt, so we can sort them out in the morning. On hearing Fate say we, Evan prepared himself, feeling though this surely must be his cue for an introduction. They carried on their conversation as though Evan was non-existent. All the while he continued straining to hear what was being said. He also inched closer to Fate in the hopes of a better view of the woman's loveliness. Briefly she rocked back as she shifted her weight from one leg to the other, and at last he caught a glimpse of her adorable face. He was certain of a moment's eye contact now, but Fate shuffled on his bar stool, eclipsing the woman's face and beginning to agitate Evan. He was beginning to wonder why Fate had even bothered invited him down to the lounge. All he could see of the woman now was her hand as she reached across to her glass of wine. each nail perfectly manicured and coloured a delicate shade of pink. Again, Fate moved a little, and this time Evan managed to catch a glimpse of the woman's hair, for she had turned her head away as though looking for someone. Her hair was black and thick, full of curls and ringlets. Evan yearned to make her acquaintance, but the woman started walking away in the direction of the ladies' room, taking Evan's hopes of an introduction with her. This was his chance to make inquiries as to the woman's identity, and just as importantly, why Fate had made no effort to introduce him. "Who's that?" he asked, trying to stifle his enthusiasm and hide his frustration at Fate's non-disclosure. "That lady is off limits, out of bounds," Fate responded, with an attitude which was a whole new player in the game. "Until you have learned how to appreciate a woman for who she is, rather than what she can do for you, then I suggest you remain a little more reserved than the man who was making a fool of himself while resting on the knee of Tide." Evan looked down at the floor, though this time it was representative of an apology. "Sorry." However, Evan's attention had decided that he no longer wanted to be bedfellows with his apology, as it had been lured away by the return of the woman in the heart-filled dress. The full extent of the woman's curves became more apparent to Evan as she walked towards Fate, with her ample shelf of bosom leading the way. Again she paid Evan no attention as she sat herself down on the stool next to Fate. The chances of a successful encounter were fading into a darker shade of hopelessness with each passing second. Evan resigned himself to the fact that Fate was obviously the one whom she was interested in. "I'm a trifle warm," the woman commented, speaking directly to Fate. "Yes, it is rather warm," he agreed, and then suggested that they go outside to the beer garden. "That sounds like a nice idea," she concurred. She then picked up a glass of wine and walked past Evan, making no eye contact whatsoever, and then made her way towards the patio doors. Fate followed her after inquiring of Evan if he would care to join them. Evan could see no point in tagging along, but answered in a way which left him the option open in case he changed his mind. "I may join you later after I've checked on the boy." Fate nodded and then went to join his drinking companion. As he sat brooding, Evan muttered and mumbled to himself about how he had been ignored. Then, with his feet on the cross-section of the stool, he stood up to have a look at himself in the mirror. "No," he decided, and he moved his head from side to side just to make sure, then confirmed with himself the fact that "I'm definitely not invisible." "Don't worry, you look fine," a voice from behind managed to startle and embarrass him. He felt the blood colour his face. He was just about to explain the reason for his odd behaviour, but then decided that he could only make him sound worse than he looked. He swiveled around on his stool with the intention of regaining his credibility, but was lost for words when he saw who was standing in front of him. All smiles now, the woman's face looked even more adorable, lit up with the expression which it now possessed. Standing so close to Evan that her thigh lightly brushed against his knee, it made him want to reach out and caress each individual heart that covered her dress. Decency, along with Fate's warning, triumphed over his desire to be disrespectful. Her curvaceous splendour alone was enough to entice Evan's physical desires into a confrontation with his respectability. There was something else, though, about the attributes of this lady. Some deep yearning from a suppressed secret stirred within his loins. His mind searched back through previous encounters which he had been involved in with various women. His memory drew a blank, and decided that developing new memories with this lady may be a more beneficial approach. Jesus, he tried desperately to look into her eyes, but his eyes had made up their mind exactly where they wanted to look. His task was made more demanding by the woman's breasts themselves. They were like two spoiled puppies. Look at me! Look at me! They each pleaded, vying for attention while trying to climb out to the top of her dress. Evan's ungentlemanly thoughts were interrupted when he could not help but notice that a man in a dark blue suit appeared to have taken an overpriced amount of interest in Evan keeping company with his new acquaintance. Faith had to laugh to himself. Evan did not know what to make of the woman's change in attitude and wondered if she were playing some kind of a prank on him. This has to be another one of Fate's lessons, he thought. I'm getting some drinks. Would you like another? Fate asked Evan, who declined the offer, still having half a glassful. Would you like a drink? Fate asked the woman. Please, I'll have a lager, just a half, and another half, in the same glass. Oh, just kidding, one half's fine. Then she took hold of Evan's hand and led him to the beer garden, saying as she did, Come and meet my sister. When he saw the sister, the perplexity which Evan was feeling realised that it was no longer needed, so he went back into the hotel to see who else's mind he could play around with. Standing in the beer garden was her identical twin. Do you think we look alike? She asked as she went over and placed her face next to her sister's. Evan tried to spot some difference. His eyes searched their faces, then wandered freely around the curvaceous splendour, believing he was granted free license to roam around the curves and contours of the two sisters. Well, pursued the sister. Oh yeah, very much alike. Here we are, said Fate, returning from the bar with two drinks. One for you, love, he said, handing a glass of wine to the first twin. And one for you, Lust, he added, handing the requested lager to the other one. Their names shone light onto the confusion that had been occurring since the first twin had shown up. Evan smiled at the implications which Lust's name brought to mind, while his embarrassment blushed about the way he had lusted over the entity that he had, on numerous occasions, mistaken for her sibling. Rather than stand up any longer, the sisters opted to sit at a picnic-style table that had two attached benches. Fate sat next to Love, and Evan sat next to Lust. Gradually, as the night wore on, the first twin did open up more and eventually spoke to Evan, though not with the same frequency or enthusiasm that she spoke to Fate. Whether the reason for her changed attitude was because Evan was getting to know the woman a little, or whether she was becoming more acquainted with the wine, he did not know, and quite frankly, he did not really care. The one thing that he did know for certain was that he was in the company of two adorable women and his good friend Fate, and he was having a wonderful time. Definitely more fun than being in a warehouse with those two losers, thought Evan. He was taken aback by the turn of phrase which he had used to describe his two previous partners in crime. Love stood up. Excuse me, she said. I'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. It came as no surprise to Evan when her sister also asked to be excused, though he did wonder what she had whispered in Fate's ear on her way past. Whatever it was had made Fate smile. One last drink before bed, inquired Fate, with a glint in his eyes. Evan wondered if Fate really did have only orange juice in his glass. Fate placed an order with a passing waitress. Evan wondered what pot he was hatching and asked him. Fate reminded him that just because he was here to learn, there was no reason why some lessons could not be fun. The drinks arrived courtesy of the waitress, who placed a tray containing 3 glasses of lager and a glass of cherry juice down on the table. Fate's mixing his drinks a bit tonight, isn't he? Before Evan had time to comment on the drinks, the twins returned. Neither of them spoke, and both wore the same expression. Then they sat down next to Evan, one on either side. I feel like a thorn between two roses, he quipped nervously, trying to get a response that might indicate who was who. Nobody spoke. Then Evan felt a hand gently squeeze his thigh, so he turned to look at the twin on his right, who he deduced must be Lust. The caressing ceased, and the twins took a small drink from their glasses. Just a sip, really. Turning to Evan, they both pouted, and then took another sip. "Why don't you give Lust a kiss?" suggested Fate, spicing up the game. Having had a few beers and feeling carefree and confident, he moved towards the one on his left. She pulled back and raised a cautionary finger. He said Lust, and then she gave him a gentle push towards her sister. He was anticipating a long, lustful kiss, but she also raised a cautionary finger and warned him, "No tongue." Then she gave him a peck on the cheek and whispered in his ear, "Later." Both the sisters picked up their glasses and challenged Evan to a race. Then one of them laid down the stakes by saying, "The loser goes up top," with the other sister adding, "And the winner goes underneath." Evan could not believe the nature of the challenge, but before he had a chance to clarify the stakes, Fate called out, "Let the game commence." The sisters were off, leaving Evan behind in the opening seconds, wolfing down their beer as though it had no fizz. They were halfway down their glasses before Evan had even lifted his glass from the table. The twins were lying neck and neck as they came into the home stretch. Then one of them eased up to let the other one be victorious. The twins finished first and second, with Evan coming in last. Fate acted as referee. He reached across the table and held up the hand of the winner. "Hurrah!" she cried. Suddenly, without any warning, there was a loud crack, a flash of lightning, and the heavens opened, sending down the rain in torrents. Everybody dashed inside. In fact, Evan was one of the very first through the patio doors, pushing past everyone, being hurried along by a secret fear of the thunder and lightning. Evan thought back to the time when he had been caught in a thunderstorm when he was a boy. Scooby and his brother had once told him how to keep safe from lightning. Unfortunately, they had given him the wrong advice, and he had climbed Old Igneous. He shuddered at the frightening memory as he now watched the raindrops bounce off the ground like transparent beads of anger. Suddenly the wind roared and pushed out of the air, thrashing the rain against the patio doors like hundreds of insane insects desperate to be let in so as to shelter from the hideous weather. "Might as well call it a night," said Fate, bringing Evan back to an awareness of the present. Fate, who was always one for ensuring that any and all bets were honoured, suggested to Evan that a bit of room shuffling would be a good idea, due to the fact that the boy was in Evan's room. "Good idea," agreed Evan, and they all exchanged door keys. All four of them walked upstairs to the landing, then into the hallway. Fate's room was next to Evan's room, whereas the sister's room was across the hallway. Fate took the hand of Love, led her to the door of her own room, and then kissed the back of her hand, bidding her good night. She gently squeezed Fate's hand, and then eased herself towards his face. She spoke softly into Fate's ear, and in that moment Evan understood why Fate had steered him away from Love, for she was his emotional intimacy. Their inner tenderness was profound, and their outer adoration was obvious. She let herself into her room and closed the door behind her. Fate turned and entered Evan's room, where the youngster was asleep. He closed the door behind him and got ready for bed. The door from the room next to what was now Lust's and Evan's room creaked, and as Evan turned, he just about managed to catch a glimpse of a dark blue jacket sleeve. He wondered if it was the man from the bar who he had earlier seen watching him. He dismissed the preoccupation when he looked at Lust and wondered how he had managed to end up with such a dramatic-looking woman on a night that he had originally planned to spend with two blokes in a warehouse. try as he may to stop the lyrics of a song from a movie singing inside his head, he could not help but play in his mind the song, "Tonight is your night, bro," while the image of Danny DeVito danced in his mind's eye. He slid Fate's key into the lock and walked in with lust, leaving Mr. DeVito to dance down the hallway to find a woman of his own. Your night, bro. Once inside the room, Evan anticipated something special from the woman in the heart-filled dress, which was now slipping seductively towards the floor. He was not disappointed, for the night was filled with such splendor and passion that all previous encounters faded into mediocrity. Lust took Evan into new dimensions of pleasure and satisfaction while teaching him what a real woman needs in the bedroom. Outside, the thunder and lightning paled into insignificance compared to the sexual storm that overwhelmed Evan inside the hotel room that night.